I'm here at Roche Farm and Garden, here to talk about some of our products. I know some of you around know me, but for those of you that don't, my name is Greg Parrish, and I'm with Farmers Organic. We do soil, compost, and fertilizer in the bag for retail, but we also do a good bit of education. And to give you a little bit about my background and our background, I'm originally from over near Brooklet, Georgia, not too far down the road. I grew up very rural. I have, a family background in agriculture, more specifically dairy. But I just want to talk to you guys this morning about soil and compost, a little bit about gardening. And I know some of you are interested in doing your own composting and your own home gardening, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But first off, I want to ask you guys a question. What is healthy soil? And I'll give you a second to think about that, to think about what healthy soil really is. And if out of this, if you're watching and you only remember one thing, I want you to remember that healthy soil equals living soil. Now, why do I say living soil? The reason being, a good, healthy soil is full of all kind of living things, be it earthworms, be it crickets, grasshoppers, ladybugs, anything like that. You're going to have living things in your soil, but there's also going to be things that you can't see, called microorganisms. And these help break down harmful pathogens. They help also to make nutrients that are in your soil that are not currently available more available. There are also other things in your soil, some of them not so good, and some of you have had some bad experience with slugs and snails and that sort of thing. And as a little side note, a very easy way to get rid of slugs and snails in your garden patch is go find you a real cheap can of beer and a saucer. Pour that beer in the saucer, leave it out overnight, and you'll be covered up with dead slugs and snails. Also ask yourself, what are some characteristics of healthy soil? One word you might be familiar with is soil tilth. Soil tilth is the overall quality of your soil. Now, what gives you good quality soil? We already know that in order to have good soil, you need living soil for it to be healthy. Now, in order for you to have healthy living soil, you also need good tilth. That is the overall health of your soil. Good, healthy soil is not going to compact easily. It's going to stay relatively loose. You're going to have a relatively high percentage of organic matter. Give you an example. Around here, you're going to have a lot of really hard-packed clay soils. And also, you go a little bit south or east or west, you're going to find a lot of sandy soils, which are really poor. Give you an example. We have a 30-acre pivot that we do organic soybeans on and sometimes field corn. It's located on a prehistoric sand dune. When I say sand dune, I mean 100% sand. We started utilizing this field approximately 10 years ago. There was almost 0% organic matter. One thing organic matter does is it helps your soil to retain water, and it keeps it from compacting. This soil was so bad that while it was loose, sandy soil, and roots had an easy time getting into it, you could turn on irrigation for 24 hours and cut them off for 24 hours, and the very next day you would have dry soil. After several years of amending the soil with organic materials such as a chicken manure compost that we make and raw chicken manure, we ended up with over 4% organic matter. And for those of you that think that's not a lot, really and truthfully, being able to get your soil up in percent of organic matter is very difficult to do, and to maintain it is very difficult. So, what I want you to remember is having healthy soil means that you're going to have a very rich soil that's living and filled with a lot of organic matter. Now, you might be asking, what is organic matter? Organic matter is a material usually that was living, more or less plant debris that is no longer living. A good source of organic matter are leaves that fall in the fall, grass clippings after they've dried. If they're fresh, it's considered a nitrogen source, and I'll get to that in a minute. Newspaper clippings, grass clippings, yard waste, mulch, they're all sources of organic matter, and they add to your soil. Another quality of healthy soil is you want to make sure that it has proper drainage. Here's why. A soil that is in a bottom area that stays wet is not going to be conducive to growing your plants, because a lot of plants are susceptible to too much water. For example, a tomato plant is very susceptible to root rot. And the way you get root rot is too much water. Too much water is basically a plant's version of gangrene. And for those of you that are familiar with the term gangrene, you know that when you get it, it is not good. And it's the same way for a plant. If you discover you have a plant that is suffering from root rot, just go ahead and pull it up, throw it away, and start over. A couple other things you want to make sure and have are a low weed population. Generally speaking, a soil that is very healthy, high in organic matter, and rich has less weed pressure. And you would kind of think that the better it is for the weeds, but it's really not. When you have all your beneficials there, your beneficial bacteria, your beneficial insects, it makes it a little bit more difficult for your weeds, and it makes it easier for your plants that you want to grow, like your tomatoes, peppers, rose bushes, whatever, to thrive. The main reason being, when you have a healthy plant, they compete extremely well with weeds. Also, beneficial insects are very, very, very helpful. If there was a time if I saw a wasp in a cornfield, I did not like it one bit because I was worried about getting stung. Now I see a wasp in a cornfield or my garden patch, I know it's a good thing, and here's why. Specifically the corn earworm, that wasp is going to lay its eggs inside of the corn earworm. So what happens? The larvae from the wasp eat the corn earworm from the inside out, which kills the corn earworm. Also, they'll do that with a tomato hornworm as well. And for you tomato growers, you know that's a pest, and you want to get rid of it. Ladybugs are a very beneficial insect to have. So are praying mantises and some others. Some of these insects, like your praying mantises and ladybugs, are now available at most garden centers, farm and garden feed and seed places that carry plants. The last sign of a very good, healthy, living soil that I want you to remember is that a good quality soil is very durable. And what I mean by durable is that you don't have as many erosion problems as you normally would with a really bad soil. That organic matter in the soil is going to be able to help you keep your soil there and minimize runoff. How do we build healthy soil? There's really not a lot of ways to do it right. Building healthy soil requires you to constantly add back to the soil. What your plants are going to do is they're going to constantly take up nutrients as they grow. So if you're not always adding back to your garden patch, if you're not always amending, you're going to have issues. The same goes for your lawn. If you constantly take away, like say you bag your grass clippings, that is taken away from your soil. I myself mulch my grass clippings. But if you're not always adding back, if you're not doing the maintenance on your yard, you're going to end up having problems. The same with a garden. And the best way to keep your ground healthy, to keep your dirt healthy, is to add organic matter back to it. This is done in a variety of ways. You can come to a place like Roche Farm and Garden and buy your composts, which is going to be a lot easier for you to do than trying to make a commercial amount of compost. Another way to add back to your garden is to compost your kitchen scraps. The thing about it is it'll help out a lot. You'll learn a lot. You'll reduce the amount of garbage you have, and you also reduce the smell in your trash can quite a bit. But you will never be able to produce enough compost in your house to supplement everything you need to add back to your soil. That's why places like Roche Farm and Garden carry compost, so you can feed your soil. It's feeding your soil equals healthy soil. They carry a variety of our compost that we make, and a little bit about our history of composting. We traditionally row crop and have poultry operations, 2 of them to be exact, and we started composting for our own use. And then it just became all of this. I'll get into our products in a little bit, but as far as your home composting goes, here's what you need to do. You, of course, want to start out with your kitchen scraps. And if you notice, especially this one is in a sealed bag. If I were to open this up inside this store, it'd run everybody out, including myself, because it smells kind of bad. But that's part of the breaking down process. These are your microorganisms getting busy and eating up all the bad stuff. But when you compost, there's an apple right here, there's some eggshells, there's some coffee grounds, there's some tea bags, there's all kind of stuff in here. But one thing you'll notice that's not in here are prepared foods and meats. The reason why you don't want to use prepared foods or meats is the undesirables that you will attract. You'll attract wild dogs, neighborhood dogs, raccoons, possums, all kind of stuff that you don't want. So that's why you use non-prepared foods. But when you're composting, you need a ratio of, a lot of people just say green to brown. You want to have about 3 parts brown to 1 part green. The 3 parts green would be your carbon source. So your leaves, paper, mulch, wood chips, that sort of thing. And your 1 part would be your green, which is your nitrogen source. That nitrogen source are your vegetables, fresh grass clippings, manures, etc. And the reason why you want to have this ratio is 1, it keeps it from getting as stinky, which that's pretty helpful. 2, if you don't have the proper ratio, if you have too much green, it gets real wet and stinky. If you have too much brown, you're not moist enough to compost, so everything just dries out. You want to keep a proper amount of green to ground. But what I do personally, especially if you're a small composter, is I just have a 5-gallon bucket outside my back door. I throw everything in it, and I have a spot out beside my garden where I go and dump it. But say you're doing a little more volume, you can go to a place like Roche, and you can get you a composter. And this one is a 60-gallon rotary composter. And what you do is you just add your scraps into this little door here, and you turn it every so often, several times a week, once a day, whatever you feel like doing. And eventually it'll fill up and you'll have mostly finished compost. The odds are, with your home composting in a turner, your first thing you're going to notice is not beautiful compost, but a smelly, nasty soup. And that's okay. That's just part of it. Eventually, as you add materials, it'll start breaking down quicker and quicker, and eventually you'll have a relatively finished compost. And it'll look something a little more like this. You're going to see bits of, I'll open this up because I know it doesn't smell too bad. You'll see bits of the materials you had composted and some residue left over. And it's still composting, it's still working. It's not quite ready for the garden yet because you still have some pathogens that need to get taken care of. You still have a little bit of odor. And after you finish composting with your turner or a bucket or what have you, you'll end up with something that looks a little more like this. It's going to be a little more dense. It's going to be a little more heavyweight. And you'll still see some eggshells and that sort of thing. They don't break down quite as quickly. But it's going to be really rich. It's going to be really pretty. There's going to be no odor. In fact, you're going to have a really sweet, kind of inviting smell, so you know it's done. One thing you do want to remember when your compost is pretty well finished is that it needs to cure. You'll notice there'll be low or almost no odor, but that curing stage gives those microorganisms time to stabilize and kind of mellow out and get where they're going to be at. And typically that curing stage is after you think your compost is pretty well finished, you want to wait 3 or 4 weeks before you actually use it. And if you're composting regularly, you'll always have a mix of some fresh and some old and whatnot. The best thing to do is go to the bottom of your pile and pull off of that. And that's composting. Now, we have a variety of products to help you out in your garden. Whether you're a home gardener doing vegetables or a little home flower gardener, small landscaper, Farmers Organic can help your needs with your products. Again, like I mentioned earlier, the first thing we started out with was our chicken manure compost. And you'll notice on the bag that it says pleasant earth smell. That's the truth. It has no odor to it. We compost for a minimum of 120 days. And what happens during that time period is we turn it and we ensure that we maintain the proper moisture levels, and we also maintain a temperature that gets up to about 150 degrees for approximately 20 days. And what that does is it kills your harmful pathogens and bacteria, and it gets rid of your odor, and it stabilizes the nitrogen in the chicken manure. So I know around here, there's a lot of farmers spreading it, and there's a lot of people smelling it, but you won't smell anything out of that. Also, another interesting product that's carried here at Roche is our high cotton compost. It's an excellent planting medium if you're doing some repots. You can also start seeds in it. What it is it's every part of the cotton plant after the ginning process that's been aged for 3 to 5 years. What this does is ensures there's no defoliants or chemicals left in the cotton material, but it also makes it a really pretty deep, dark black with just a little speckling of sand. It's also got some seed meal in it, and that seed meal is going to boost your fertility a little bit, so that you have a peat mushroom compost hybrid that doesn't stink, doesn't have any odor, is always uniform, and it'll do a really good job on whatever you put it on. Now, a lot of you are probably really familiar with cow manure. People have been bagging that and selling it for a really long time, and it is great stuff. The only thing about a cow manure versus a chicken manure is going to have 3 to 4 times the nutrient content of a cow manure, no matter where it comes from. So, that being said, the chicken manure, you don't necessarily want to plant straight into it. The cow manure, however, you can. And our cow manure that's carried here at Roche is about 3 parts cow manure to 1 part like local peat. So what that means is you have a very high quality product that is mostly cow manure, unlike a lot of other products. And you're going to be able to plant straight into it and use it almost like a garden soil if you want. Also, a lot of people like to use that to start their seeds as well and do some repotting as well. Another great product we have for you guys that are really into lawn care, we call it Nitroganic. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the brand name Milorganite. This is just our own Georgia version of it. And you're going to have a nice big plentiful bag. It's going to do everything Milorganite will do. You're going to have about a 2% iron. The only real difference is there's slightly less odor than Milorganite. And that's a big plus for those of you that have used it, or maybe even accidentally spilled a bag and let it get wet, because it'll stink. But this doesn't smell quite as bad. Also, another thing about these kind of biosolid products like Milorganite or Nitroganic is that they have a deer and rabbit deterrent. This just naturally comes with it. You're looking at a good 4 weeks on deterring deer and rabbits, depending on rainfall. And you don't want to miss that 4-week window, and I'll tell you why. The first time I did it, I was skeptical, but it worked. And I knew I needed to reapply my Nitroganic, but I'd get home at the end of the day, it'd be hot, I'd be tired, and my recliner would just be calling my name. So I would sit in the recliner, and by the time it got to where I decided I needed to go do it again, they found me. That was at about 6.5 weeks. So I got a lot of time out of it, but just be careful and don't miss that application. If you're using a product like this in your yards, you want to fertilize quarterly. An easy way to remember your fertilization schedule is just focus on the big holidays, like Christmas, Easter, 4th of July, etc., and you'll be pretty spot on your fertilizing schedule. If you need any help as far as gardening goes, or you need any advice, you have questions or concerns, please visit us at our website, www.farmersorganic.com, or Facebook, Farmers Organic, or Twitter, Farmers Organic. We'll be more than glad to answer any questions on gardening, application, just to help you out. And that's something we like to do for you guys. A few common questions that people tend to have on our products or like products are these. Regarding chicken manure compost, again, there's no odor, and you really, really don't have to worry about it burning your plants because it's been fully composting. Raw chicken manure will burn your plants if you use it inappropriately, but a good composted chicken manure, like Farmers Organic chicken manure compost, will not burn your plants. Farmers Organic High Cotton is a plant derived from the cotton plant. And a concern a lot of people have is that the cotton plant is one of the most heavily sprayed crops that are grown in the United States, especially the Southeast. You need a lot of chemicals to get it up and going, and you got to spray it a lot to knock the leaves down. And some people ask me, how in the world can this be a certified organic product? And here's how. You treat it just like certifying land. It takes about 3 years to get a piece of land certified that has been in conventional production. So what we have to do is we have to let our cotton waste sit for a period of approximately 3 years. University studies have shown on cotton waste that after respraying their samples over and over with every chemical you could think of, they let it sit for 3 years, and after 3 years there was zero trace of any chemical whatsoever. And to me, that's pretty amazing about how Mother Nature works. Also, on the nitroganic, again, it's pretty goof-proof, and it won't burn your plants. It'll keep deer and rabbits away. However, dogs will occasionally decide it tastes good and try to get into a bag and eat some of the fertilizer. It won't hurt your dogs. They'll be fine. I would like to point out a pretty interesting fact. As most of you are well aware, Roche Farm and Garden has been in business for a very long time. And as part of their business model, they have a cotton gin. And they know and they stress the importance of reusing your materials. And they also know how good of a material a cotton-type compost is. They just don't have the time to let it sit and cure for 3 years and then throw it in a sack. And that's what we do. So come on down to Roche, get you some cotton compost, and go planting.